Start rolling. So welcome. You know what you signed up for probably. We talk about sales engineering and also talk a little bit about sales engineering at my company. So try to kind of cover in a general sense and then specific to American Cast Iron Pipe Company. But first, a little bit about who's doing all the talking today, and that's me. I've been with American approaching 30 years. Started off as a sales engineer. I'm an Auburn grad, so sorry about that, but mechanical engineer. I also have my professional engineering license that I pursued in the state of Florida, so I have it in Florida and Mississippi. And so I've been working in the water industry my entire career, and I've been on the sales side of our business. I started off in Pittsburgh. After training in Birmingham, I lived in Florida for a while, and I've lived in Birmingham now since 2002, so 24 years, approaching 24 years in Birmingham. So it's been a great career for me. It's a great company, and I'm hoping to kind of tell you about my adventure and teach you guys a little bit about sales engineering at the same time. So basic stuff here. So what is sales engineering? It's a question we get a lot from engineering students. They're thinking about this, and I'm like, well, what is it? I don't know anything about it, which is why you're here today. So hopefully I'm going to answer that question for you in detail. But at a high level, you got the technical side covered in your engineering, and sales kind of brings in the business side. And so we'll talk about this a little later, but I'd like to make a comparison. Engineering side is kind of like black and white. In sales engineering, you're going to be living in the gray area. Okay, it's not so cut and dry. So there's some additional skills that you need to think about if you want to pursue a career in sales engineering, and we'll talk about those as well. So what do we do, fundamentally? So I'll relate this in general, and then I'll relate it to what we do at our company as well. But fundamentally, we're trying to solve problems. Okay, that's no different than typical engineering. We're solving problems. It's just the format is a little bit different, and the sales part requires a lot of communication and a lot of listening. So one thing is that we typically are doing this in a variety of ways, because on the sales side of businesses, that's where you have the most variety because you're customer facing. So when you're dealing with the customers direct in a sales role for a company, that's where you're going to get away from the kind of the everyday do the same thing type thing. Sometimes you don't even know what you're getting into. You got to go find out where the problem is. You got to go find what the problem is. And often, as you probably know, the problem someone might articulate is not the problem. So you kind of dig deep and deeper and deeper. But I think the problem-solving mentality that you train for in engineering school is very helpful in this role, because you're problem solvers, and you kind of also do some detective work at the same time. And so that's what I've always liked about it. You get that variety. It's a high level of interest, and you're fixing things. You're helping people. Now you're doing that, but you're also employed for a company. So you're doing that to benefit your company as well. So in our case, as sales engineer for American Cast Iron Pipe Company, we're trying to solve problems with the products that we offer. And so we got to figure out what the problem is, and then we got to figure out a way to leverage our company and our products into that solution. And sometimes it's not always a fit, but often it is, especially in the industry that we work in. We'll talk about that in a minute too. It's a misconception, it's sales, and, we're not selling vacuum cleaners. We're not kind of going, typically door to door and just, creating a product. Often sales engineers are in industries that the products are very well known, and that's certainly the case for American. So we deal with water infrastructure products primarily. And so all over the country, everyone knows about our company and our products. They just may not understand how that fits into their project or problem that they might have. You need to be a natural extrovert. That's not necessarily the case. You certainly need some good communication skills. I would say, one of the things that I worked on myself over the years is kind of, small talk, chit chat, because the technical part of my brain is like, it's a waste of time. We don't need to talk about the weather here. But, there is a need for some of that. Obviously, you got to break down some barriers to open up some channels of communication. But again, we're engineers, we're problem solvers, and the people we deal with most of the time are engineers as well. So they get it. So we can kind of have a little bit of the idle chit chat, but we can also kind of dive right in. Let's start talking about the technical stuff and kind of see what's going on here. engineers aren't good at selling. I disagree with that, of course, but I think the differentiation is that we're not really pitching a product necessarily, we're pitching a solution. And that's, to me, a different mindset, and really we're doing that on a technical basis. And I think that's why sales engineering is a good fit for certain folks that have that engineering background. Engineers are very trusted. So, we hire engineers because engineers have a reputation of solving problems. We talk to engineers, like I mentioned already, and so there's kind of already a trust level there, like engineer to engineer, or, if it was doctor to doctor, it's the same kind of thing. We can speak the language, we can get technical if we need to, we can get broad if we need to, we're both problem solving. And really, I think what's really nice about our industry is we're in, primarily drinking water. And so the folks are really there that we work with. They're just really good folks, and we're not trying to kind of really oversell, or there's not a lot of sales pitches or gimmicky things in our world, because of what we're trying to do is bring drinking water to the public, and all the people we work with are trying to do the same thing. So it's a very noble thing, and I think because of that, the industry as a whole and all the folks involved in that industry are really kind of seeing it the same way, and that's why they're really good to work with. And you can see on here too, high credibility, high influence position. Again, engineers know what we're talking about. We're trained to be very accurate. We're very accurate in what we do, what we say, and so the problems solving techniques that we're going to bring to the solution is going to be accurate and trusted. That doesn't go away just because you're in sales. It'd be the same thing if you're working on a design problem. There could be bad impacts of wrong answers. So us as engineers, we understand that mindset, and we're just bringing it into a sales category. So what does it mean at American? There's one big thing. Come on in. Start. One thing I'll start with is I talked about working in that gray area, and I think it's really important to talk about our culture when you're talking about working in the gray area. So in the gray area, things aren't black and white. You don't have as many clear borders and boundaries and decision-making processes. So I think for us and our company, what differentiates American is our culture. And so when you're working in the gray area, it's really good to know that you have a strong culture, that knowing that you're going to do the right thing, and you're going to be backed by doing the right thing. And I've learned in my 29 years that sometimes doing the right thing is expensive. We make mistakes. We send product that isn't made right, or maybe we didn't order it correctly or something like that, but we stand behind it, and that could be expensive. But the nice thing is about American is that no one's ever questioned me in my 29 years on a decision or something I felt. And I think that's very important, especially when you're working in this kind of gray area. Because things aren't black and white, so there's a lot of judgment that has to occur, especially in sales. But, with that, we have a lot of training, and I think that's another thing that sets us apart. Sales engineers with our company train formally for 6 months. So you guys graduate, get a job straight out of school. You'd be in Birmingham for a 6-month period, and what we're trying to do there is kind of really build a foundation. And what we do is kind of in 3 categories. The first thing is the technical training. So we learn about the design and the manufacturing of all of our products. But then we go a step further, and we kind of learn about the design and manufacturing of our competing products. Because the reputation we want to have in the industry is for us to be an expert in our pipe and our competing materials as well. So we're a pipe expert. And in order to be that, you have to know about the competitors' products as well. And you need that to sell against it as well. So it's very important for a lot of reasons. And so we spend a lot of time in training, doing design work, reading standards that we manufacture to learn about the industry. And then the second phase of that training is what I'll call project management, and kind of all the things that we would have to do after we secure an order. There's a whole team that we work with. We call them, some companies call them inside sales. We call them the project management group. They help build the quotations. They do things called takeoffs, where they're helping put together a bill of material for a project. If we get a project, there's a whole bunch of order administration things that have to occur. So we like to train our sales engineers on that so they know what their teammates are doing, because they work very closely together, the inside and the outside teams. And also, if we have to fill in for some of that, sometimes we kind of got to step up and chip in, and we're teammates. So it's good to understand and know how we do all the order administration. And then finally, the third part is kind of a catch-all category. A couple things we do in that third group is one thing is presentations. We do a lot of presentations in sales. So we do a lot of lunch and learns. Engineers and specifiers in general, they rely on us as manufacturers to teach them about our products, teach them about industry trends. And so we're constantly customer facing, doing presentations just like I'm doing here. We call lunch and learns a lot. We can do all kinds of formats. But it's very important that we train and make sure that our sales engineers during training not only understand the material, but that they can present it in an appropriate way that's receivable. So we work on that. The sales engineer training will go through about 5 presentations. They'll do it to peers. We let them do it's kind of a mock presentation, and then we go through a period at the end of that where we give them feedback and say, hey, you might need to work on this, we need to work on that. And that also lets us gauge whether or not they're getting what they need to, and we may need to go back to a certain subject and do some additional training on that. Next thing we do in that third bucket is travel. So we want the sales engineer to kind of understand more about our industry, more about our customers, and we can't just tell them about that. So we put them through about 5 one-week trips during that 6-month period where they're shadowing sales engineers all over the country. So we put them in different states, different situations. They get to see hands-on, what does it look like? What are we doing every day? And you'll see the variety. So it helps to kind of get all that learning stuff and then go on a trip and kind of see how it looks in the field and go back and learn a bit more and see how that looks in the field. So we feel that's very important. That's expensive to do. 6 months of training with all those things is very costly. If you can imagine, we're getting zero output from a sales engineer in training, right? So it's a big investment for us, but I think that's what differentiates us as well, is the investment we have in the training. We know that it's very important. We know that you're technically strong and you got that part, but we got to train you on our products, train you on our industry, and train you on our culture as well. But the training really doesn't stop there. And again, kind of another differentiator. So that's phase 1. We have a phase 2 training. In the phase 2 training, I like to tell folks it's certainly more hands-on because you'd be assigned to a territory, and now you're going through this phase 2 training. That usually runs about 18 months. And I usually tell folks when you're out of school, I know it might be hard to think about something. It takes really 2 years to kind of really get into the groove of things. It's not that you're not being productive. It's just that, you're really not getting everything until you hit about that 2-year mark. And we know that. So we kind of have that phase 2 training. That's where the sales engineer is working with their manager. Again, it's hands-on. You're in a territory. You're making calls. You're doing presentations, but you're still going through a structure of training in that second phase. And we do actually have a third phase, and that third phase is not on a certain schedule. And I'm in charge of that, and with what I do now, I evaluate the industry. I evaluate our sales force. We might identify training needs that come up every few years or so, and we try to make sure that we implement a phase 3 training on the topic that's needed for that time period. Right now is a recent one is kind of collaborative delivery in data centers. You probably all heard of data centers by now, maybe not heard of collaborative delivery, but it's a change in our industry. We had to do a lot of training on that to kind of make sure that we stay up with the trends in our industry. So I want to talk about us as a company and kind of our world and our industry as well, if you're not familiar already. So this is just a graphic of a typical water utility. I don't know the water utility here. It's Tuscaloosa Water or something. But so this would be, something like Tuscaloosa Water. So what this system represents is you're getting water from a source. You're bringing it into the middle here where you have, see it's out. Okay. So you have like a treatment facility. Then you're going to store it. This would be good drinking water at this point, and then you're going to distribute it out to various networks. So you get inputs coming from various sources typically. It could be rivers, it could be lakes, it could be underground sources, depending on where you are in the country. So the pipelines that move this water from the sources to the treatment facility and from the treatment facility out is the products that we deal with. So we make the pipe for that, and we also make the valves and hydrants that are part of those systems. And here's an analogy that I like to put together. Most people can kind of understand building a house where you have a homeowner, you have an architect, you have a builder. And so I'll kind of talk about our world and what sales engineers do. and related to that scenario. So the owner utility, that'd be the Tuscaloosa Water, that's similar to you as a homeowner. Say you're a homeowner and you're going to go build a house, you're going to go hire an architect to build out the plans for the house. Well, utility is going to do something similar. They're going to identify the need for a pipe project, and they're going to hire a consulting engineer to do that design work. So those two are parallel there. And then as a homeowner, you're going to ultimately have a builder. And similarly, on the utility side, once the project's designed out, they're going to usually, through a bid process, they're going to have a contractor on board, and that's the contractor that does all the work. We actually say in our world, we kind of sell the job 3 times because we have to sell our products via the specifications to the owner or the utility. We have to sell the products through our specifications to the engineer and the designer, and really the financial transaction usually occurs by the contractor. So again, if you're relating it to building a house, your builder is probably going to be the one that goes and buys your lumber, your sheetrock, and all that. It's the same in our world. The contractor is going to be the one that buys all the parts, including the pipe for their project. So that's where the financial transaction takes place. And then we really have a 4th category, and that's distribution. And again, relating to the housing, that'd be like, your Home Depot. So in our world, we look at distributors that carry our products and they sell them for us on our behalf. So they're an extension of our sales team. We actually hire sales engineers to work closely with our distributors to support all their efforts in distribution. So we have our sales force in 2 groups. We have business development. They're going to work primarily in that specification side with the owners and the engineer. And then we're going to have the account managers. That's going to work a lot with the contractors and the distribution side. If you guys have any questions, this is very informal. So feel free to raise your hand, understand something, ask me some more about it, ask me about my career, anything you'd like. So a couple not really case studies, but a couple examples. And these were projects that I was involved with. This one was an interesting project in that it was down in Florida. It carried 2 of our product lines. It carried ductile iron pipe and steel pipe. And this was in a different delivery method. It's in this collaborative delivery method. You guys might have heard of maybe design build. It was in that category where basically using the housing analogy, the architect and the builder are one team. So they come together as a team. So in our world, the same thing occurs, and they call it collaborative delivery, where the engineer and the contractor work together as a team. Usually it's more linear. Working together as a team allows them to design it at the same time with the contractor, so to make sure it's constructible and really end up with a better product. So this was that type of job. You can see the scope of the work here. It's a pretty big job. You got 10 plus miles of 42 and 48 inch pipe, at 54,000 feet total of American pipe. We had our gate valves on this project as well. And then really the unique part, this is what I was involved in, is the 2,000 feet of spiral welded pipe and HDD. So that means horizontal directional drill. So as you can imagine, when you're dealing with 10 miles of pipe, you're probably going to hit some conflict that you want to get around. And sometimes getting around it means going underneath it. And so often these are some type of natural environment or protected environment, like a watershed or a river or a creek. And they don't necessarily want to just dig it all up and put this big pipeline through it. So they can bore underneath it. And you've probably seen this in your neighborhoods on small scales. You see they pull the utilities through the curbs and little like orange tubes and so forth, and they're running the power and your fiber through all those. On a much bigger scale, we're doing the same thing. So horizontal directional drill. So as a sales engineer, we were engaged with the design build team, and they had to develop a specification. And so what we did, one of the challenges was they didn't have a good specification that was really buildable. They kind of grabbed a template off a shelf, and once we got a look at it, we were telling them, hey, this isn't really a product that you can do for this size pipe. So that might work for like some 4-inch pipe, but when you get into this really large pipe, you have different coating options. And coating is really important in a horizontal directional drill. As you can imagine, we're pulling pipe through a hole, so you have a lot of abrasion and things like that. So you need to protect that asset, and you do that by putting a very specialized coating on it. So we got involved there, and we went through a lot of training and iterations with the designers to ultimately give them a specification that's met the criteria that they had, and then also that was something they could get from the industry. and also us. So, in that process, of course, we wrote it in a favorable way to us. And sometimes you can't be very obvious and just say, use American pipe. Sometimes you got to be a little more subtle about your solution, and then you could specify it technically, and it could be things that we as a company do and our competition doesn't. And so that's what we did in this case. And so, fortunately, it worked out well. We ended up with a great project. This project's been highlighted. If you kind of go to LinkedIn, you can see this project on our site as well. There's been a lot of talk about this. It's a very successful project overall, and that's just one of the small examples. But I thought that would be good to give you kind of a role of a sales engineer. Here's another one that I was involved with. This was several years ago. Grand Strand Water is Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. This one was challenging because it was 48-inch pipe, and traditionally Grand Strand Water prefers plastic pipe, PVC pipe. And as you can imagine, very metallic pipe, the big concern is often corrosion. And so this entity was just sold on the fact that, all metal pipe is bad and we're going to put plastic pipe in because it's better. And so we had to go and basically sell this utility on using steel pipe in this case, and selling it that it was better. So this was a utility that never used steel pipe before. They weren't familiar with it. They haven't really specified it much, never worked with it. And so what we did with the utility and the designing engineer is we did a lot of presentations. Actually, in this case, we brought them to our facility, and this pipe here at the bottom, I kind of made up this pipe in our shop to show the maintenance crew of that utility, hey, if you have steel, here are some of the things that you need to deal with, because pipe's probably going to get damaged at some point by a third party because these right-of-ways are congested where this pipe is, so they're drilling holes and putting in light poles and things like that. So maintenance crews needed to understand how to repair and maintenance our product that we're potentially going to sell them. So we got all that groundwork done, and of course we were successful in the project, or I wouldn't be telling you about it. And so that worked out good. But again, that was a different problem to solve and a different solution that we had to do. Of course, I can go on and on about the technical comparisons of PVC and steel. We had to deal with that as well. At a high level, our argument is really along the lines of thinking long term. There's longevity associated with our products. There's a history that supports that longevity. And from a material strength standpoint, there's a lot of consistency with metallic products, as you probably understand, versus a plastic where the strength deteriorates over time. So plastic tries to really kind of predict where that future is going to be when we don't have to worry about that. And that's one of the tactics we use when we're competing against plastic. We talked a little bit about some of these things. Talked about 6-month training, talked about freedom of trust and encouragement, kind of, again, relying on that culture, especially when you're in this gray area, which sales jobs are going to be in the gray area. There are some travel perks. People often say, hey, I like traveling, it'd be a good opportunity to travel. And it is fun, and I've enjoyed traveling. It's been a pleasure to be in. I've been in every major city in the U.S. multiple times, and it's been really fun to kind of learn those cities and stuff. But traveling is a necessity because our company, and this is what sets us apart too, we do business in person. We do face-to-face business. And in order to do that, you have to go. You have to travel. You have to be on the road. And so we get a company car. So there's sales engineers that are assigned to territories. They could be as small as a part of Florida and as large as the whole northwestern part of the U.S. So it depends. And it's not that, if you're in that northwest extreme, you're probably flying and driving. You're in Florida, you're probably just driving. But all sales engineers get a company car. Of course, all the business expenses are paid for, cell phone, things like that. But there's a lot of overnight stays, and sometimes it can be fun. Sometimes it can be very tiring. But it's what I've liked about it is that the schedule is not 9 to 5. It's very much you build your own schedule. It does take someone that's very deliberate about their schedule, because you can get kind of chewed up and spit out quick if you're not all over your schedule and planning it, which I know you guys are doing, right? You're all very organized with your classes and your homework and your projects and things like that. Well, it's no different in this world. And sales engineering is very autonomous too. So you're in a territory, yes, you have a supervisor, a manager that you're working for, but the territory is kind of yours. And so you build your own schedule. You decide, hey, I'm going to be over here this week, I'm going to be over there next week, I'm going to be over here the following week.
So is it Is it salary? Like, I'm guessing there's a salary, but is there like a commission kind of on top of it?
Yeah, that's a good question. For our company, it is salary only, so we pay competitive engineering salary. Some sales engineering, as you would imagine, is commissioned or a combination of salary and commission. And so we feel, especially in our industry, that it brings more integrity to the transaction when we're salaried. So there's not even a perception that we're motivated to sell something because we got to put food on the table tonight. And so, we feel very strongly about that. And it's fairly common in our industry as well. Even our competitors have that salary set up the same way.
Is the salary based on your regions? Like you'd make more if you're in California versus you'd make less if you're in Birmingham? Is that how it works?
It's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah, so we call it a COLA, cost of living adjustment. So for our company, our salaries are based out of Birmingham. If you lived in Southern California, you're probably making 30-35% more, so it'd be adjusted. It's never negative for us. Yeah. So if there's some place that you would live that's a cheaper cost of living than Birmingham, you'd still make the Birmingham salary base. Yeah, it's done. There's a nationally recognized company that we utilize to set that cost of living adjustment. That's built in. Good questions. Anybody else on any of those? We're employee owned for over 100 years. So our founder, we've been around since 1905, and our founder, he decided to build the company, to build a product that was, noble, building pipes that bring drinking water, very noble. But really what was behind it, and what was more important to him, was to build a company on a certain culture. And that culture is based on the golden rule. Treat people like you want to be treated. It sounds very fundamental, but that's not very easy all the time in a business environment. Right. So you probably heard people, business is business. I got to wear my work hat and I go home and I wear, my dad hat or my brother hat or whatever. And the nice thing working for SIPCO, we don't wear those two different hats. The investment that a company has to its employees is equal, if not sometimes even more of an investment we have to our customers. And because of that culture and built on the golden rule, we've had just a ton of success over the years, and we have a lot of longevity with our employees. Like I mentioned, I'm 29 years. I'm just getting going. I mean, we got people that are much more than me. We have one lady that works with us. This is unusual, but she just celebrated her 60th year with us last year. And but I mean, it just tells you the longevity. Just tells you that we have a good culture. And I know that might be hard to see in your stage of life right now. 5 years is a long time away, but I tell you, it really makes a big difference when you can work somewhere and you feel good about the work you do, you feel good about the people you work with, you feel good about the customers you deal with. It makes for a nice balanced life, and I think that's unique to us. So, a typical work week, question we get all the time, give me the day in the life of a sales engineer. It's going to vary. Of course, like I mentioned, there's a lot of variety when you're customer facing. You might have this perfect plan for your week, and come noon on Monday, that whole plan gets blown up. That happens probably in your lives as well. But, a typical week, if you want to look at it, here's some percentages of customer meetings, technical problem solving. We have to, of course, there's paperwork and doing proposals and doing some office work. There's some of that as well. Travel is a good chunk of it. On the travel side, I talked a little bit about it. One number we usually tell folks to expect, and this changes territory to territory, is that you're out of the office about 65% of the time. 65% of the time. And that's because, again, the way we like to do business is to be face-to-face with the customers. Yes, we can do a Teams call, and we still do that on occasion, but the better business transaction occurs when you're face-to-face and you're sitting in front of somebody. They're going to be more open with you. They're going to trust you more. They understand you took the time out of your schedule to come see them, and that's very much appreciated. And it really sounds simple, but it's also a big differentiator. I don't know how many offices I've walked into, and they've told me they've never seen my competition ever, kind of thing. So it makes me feel better. And I enjoy seeing people face-to-face because you just get more out of it. Obviously, you can go into the whole nonverbal communication. You can kind of read people a little bit differently when you're face-to-face, and that's important as well. And then, of course, there's a chunk of time working with, your teammates. So I mentioned the business development side and the account management side. So in any area in the country, there's one of each of those. The territories don't overlap perfectly, but there is one of each of those. So there's a lot of collaboration with your teammates out in sales, a lot of collaboration with your internal teammates back in the home office as well. So technical skills, again, what if you wanted to pursue this path, what might you consider if you still have time to select some classes, for example? Certainly you got the technical skills. I don't need to dive into that too much because you got that your curriculum, your core curriculum covers that very well. But think about it, the technical skills in terms of communicating. Can you tell your family member what your design project is about in a way that they get it and understand it? Can you get detailed, but not get too detailed, and maybe make some appropriate comparisons like I did with the building a house and what a sales engineer job. Those are the kind of skills that I think that are important for a sales engineer. And that's the communication and presentations, negotiating customer relations. You guys probably all take engineering economics, your ROIs and things like that. We do a lot of life cycle cost analysis, and so it's very important to understand the economics inside as well. And so is there opportunities in your classes with your electives? Can you take a class that leans more towards communication? I'm sure you have some communication core classes that you took, but is there other things that you can get you in front of a room, get you in front of peers, get you talking more? Again, explaining technical terms and explaining technical information in layman's terms is one thing that's sometimes not really easy to do. Co-ops and internships, we do internships, great way to kind of understand, is this a path that you want to pursue? It's good for us as well because we get to understand you better as our sales interns. I tell you, we love the intern program. I don't know if any of you guys applied for it. We have a lot of different positions, not just in sales and in internships, but we do have a sales intern role that we have, at all times. We always have at least one sales intern. So there's those opportunities to look for. So questions, this is kind of a wrap up here. So, some questions you could ask, what did you think the biggest challenge of sales engineering was? You guys signed up for this, and, anybody want to take a stab?
Kind of just like understanding all aspects of the product that you're selling, and really just like being able to answer any question that comes your way and being confident in that answer, I feel like is probably one of the biggest challenges.
It is, and it's a good point to make, and but it's one of the things that I say I've enjoyed because that learning curve kind of never stops. So yes, you got to learn about our products and everything like that, but really, to be very effective in sales, you really want to learn the whole picture. And so over the years, I've learned about construction equipment. I learned about, trenches. I learned all these other things that don't necessarily have anything specific to do with our products, but it makes me more knowledgeable. It makes me a better resource to our customers. And it kind of personally helps me as well because I have a technical engineering brain, and I got to understand how things work and how things move and what it takes to put these jobs together. So it's hard to do that, but it's also a good challenge to me because there's just something else you can learn. The latest thing that I'm learning a lot about is seismic design. So seismic design, of course, earthquakes, you think seismic, and of course, this very critical infrastructure goes through earthquake zones. May not realize, but there's earthquake zones all over the country. They're not just in California. And so from a designer's perspective, they're starting to look at our products and how we can design our products in order to be more serviceable through a seismic event. And so there's a whole area that I really didn't have a lot of experience in that I'm getting a lot more experience in that seismic. And again, I'm 29 years into it. I'm learning something new. I'm actually had to learn a whole bunch because I'm presenting a paper this summer on that subject as it relates to our products, but also trying to kind of relate it to the industry and how the industry might work to design pipeline projects and the things they might need to consider, not just focusing on our solution exactly, but kind of give them a bigger picture. But yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, so you've made it really clear that your job is to sell the pipe, but is it also like if a lot of corrosion happens with the pipe, do you ever have to go back and help them mitigate the issue and solve the solution, or are you just selling the pipe?
No, that's a good question too. So yeah, corrosion is a big one, obviously, and there are ways to mitigate corrosion, and our approach to corrosion that we that we recommend, and not every designer understands it this way, but we approach corrosion as an engineering problem, just like you would, you got to figure out, how to make a machine work or whatever. We got to, do we have a corrosion problem? What is the corrosion problem? And how do we solve that corrosion problem? And it's solvable in all cases, even with our products. So that's the front end of it. But then, you're going to get some things that aren't designed right, or maybe it's not your pipe, or maybe, somebody's got some corrosive soils and it just wasn't designed right, and you have some problems in the field. Yes, we like to have those. We want to understand. So we like to get involved in those because we want to understand what happened. Maybe we can learn something as a manufacturer about what happened in that specific instance. Certainly maybe it was designed the way they thought it was, so why didn't it work? So yes, we want to be that call when they say, hey, it might not be your pipe, or maybe it was, and we have a corrosion problem. A lot of times some of the corrosion issues that we do see are related to a straight current. So in an urban area, for example, light rail systems, subways, they run on a DC current. Well, if they're in proximity to one of our pipes, for example, and that pipe is not protected a certain way, then the pipe will corrode because the current will jump on it and jump off of it. And when it jumps off, it gets a hole in it. So the pipe might have been there before that other asset was there. So the problem may have developed in the future. So we do have to consult on that a lot. So we use case studies and finding out what happened to be better.
We're big proponents of students achieving their FE and their PE once they're in full engineering. What was that path for you like as a technical engineering sales?
Well, yeah, and I had different options than students do today. I had to wait 5 years to get my experience before I qualified to take the test. And I think now you could take your FE and your PE while you're in school. Boy, I recommend that. Going back after being away from it is a little challenging. But we do have some people that pursue that. And, in my path, it was probably a little more challenging because there's not a PE exam that relates to pipe design. So I had to go back to what I really liked in my mechanical engineering curriculum, which was thermodynamics. And that's what I studied for and did my PE on.
And as somebody traveling with sales all the time, you still were able to have that mentor, because I think that's the biggest thing. You can take your PE kind of immediately following your FE, but you have to have that time.
So you're right. You have to have someone that is PE above you. That I think in the org chart, as I understand it, in the org chart, you have to have a linear connection to it. So fortunately, when I started, I had our vice president of sales. He's a PE. So that covers everybody in the sales group with a direct line. Now that person's president, so that covers everybody in the whole company. So we do have that, and we are sensitive about that and that need, because it's not necessary to have a PE, but we certainly would support all of our sales engineers to pursue their PE. I think it's a good idea. I mean, of course, I got it, but it's a hard test to take. And with the benefit of being able to take it in school now and then just meet the qualification, it's kind of a no-brainer. I would say, yes, do that and then earn your 4 or 5 years. Might depend on the state. Is it 5? Is it 5 years?
I think it's down to 3.
Is it down to 3?
I think it's 3.
It's only 3? Okay, great. It was 5 for me, but I took mine in Florida. That's where my exam was in Florida. Could be different state to state. I'll go here and then I'll go there. Go ahead.
You can go.
All right.
For sales engineering, do you guys look for specifically or just like consider like business minors or even MBAs? Like Alabama's big into like STEM to MBA. Do you guys look at that, or is it just kind of like a good perk to have?
So we have sales engineers and we have sales representatives. And so sometimes we do have a sales representative role that a non-engineer, something like that, they could pursue that. Something with, it leans more technical. Really, we do like a technical mind. We have some of our really upper management folks that don't have engineering degrees, but they're very technical folks, and so they can do very well. So for the non-engineers, I think we just got to understand, the curriculum they took a little bit, see how technical they are, and kind of, understand that background.
Are you saying though, if you have an engineering major?
Yeah, with a
you
business
have, like,
minor
a minor
or
in business? So
Yeah.
what you're saying is, if he has an engineering major but a minor in business, does that kind of boost his candidate profile for the job?
Yeah, I would say it does, for sure. Not just from a curriculum standpoint. I mean, you would be able to talk some of the lingo about our world. So, during the interview process, that would probably be very evident. So, yes.
Okay. any type of curriculum that promotes like business, which would also promote communication skills, presentation, all that stuff. Yeah, that's a good skill to have. Now, if you don't have a business minor and you just have your engineering major, I mean that's fine too. Those skills that we look for would come through some other way. But I mean, if sales engineering is really what you want to do, picking up a business related minor would probably help you.
Yeah, question?
My question was related to that. Of the technical sales people that you have now, are most of them, if they are engineering, what discipline? Are they mostly mechanical?
I'd say probably most are going to be mechanical, civil, and then after that, probably right now, chemical and industrial.
Now we do
I
accept.
don't think we have any electricals right now in our sales team.
I don't believe we do. I know
Electrical qualifies.
Yeah.
Just
we take any discipline of engineering for sales. Like we just hired someone who's a computer engineer.
yeah, computer engineer. Yeah.
Like if you have an engineering major, period, any type of engineering discipline, it does have to meet a certain accreditation that we like.
Yeah, it can be like mechanical engineering. I think they call it like mechanical engineering technology or
Yeah,
tech,
like there are
do you offer that curriculum here?
disciplines.
You do. That one doesn't qualify, but that's the only one that has the word engineering in it that doesn't. I think.
There are a couple of engineering disciplines that technically don't qualify. If you need help with determining that, you can always, ask, or when you apply, we'll determine it. But yes, pretty much any engineering discipline can apply for sales engineering.
What about metallurgical and materials for that?
The intern that I have right now is from here actually. She's materials. Emma Lewis.
Do you typically hire right out of school for the sales positions, or do you prefer some years of experience?
We both really, but primarily right out of school. We require everyone to be in Birmingham for 6 months for training, and that's sometimes a little harder to do if you're a family and you live in California. That's not as easy, and we work through that in those scenarios. But by far, most of the folks that come in fresh out of school. I started 2 weeks after I graduated.
Do you see people, not that anybody, I mean, I think an anomaly is that you've traveled for 29 years as part of your job. Like, I would think that people would kind of hit like a wall on that. So are they able to transition out of sales back into a SIPCO as an engineer there?
Sure. And so the process that we have is we have basically an internal bid process. And as long as you qualify for that job, you can bid on it. Any position, any employee can bid on it. It's posted internally. And so what we typically will do if we have a position that needs to be filled, we'll post it internally before we go externally. Doesn't mean we have to hire internally first, but that's usually how it's sequenced. But that is a question I get a lot as far as like, okay, traveling. It's fine now, fresh out of school, may not even have a significant other at this point. It's kind of easy, flexible. But probably almost all of our sales engineers have families. And in the way that works is that we build our own schedules. So, I traveled my whole career, but, I still was my son's baseball coach. I went to all their events at school. You build your own schedule, so you just work that in. You get a lot of flexibility there. So again, it's not a 9-to-5 job. You put in your hours all week long. You head out early on Fridays, that kind of thing. I mean, that's we can do that. We got that flexibility. Sometimes you got to work on a Saturday. You got to go to a conference. Maybe you got to go travel on a Saturday or Sunday. Those things happen too, but it's really that flexibility and building your own schedule kind of allows you to create the balance that you need. But it takes discipline, like I said. You have to be very deliberate about your schedule in order to get that done. But everybody's got kids, and it works well.
Still got a question here.
Mine was about work-life balance. So
Yeah. Okay.
So did that answer your question?
yeah,
Okay,
pretty much
gotcha.
hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I don't think we have anybody who's even single in our. I only mention that just because it just tells you that they balance the family life and the work life, right? And so.
Anybody else got questions about the job?
What about my second question up here? Who already knows they don't want a desk job? Because I hear that all the time. I'm like, I do not want to sit in front of a desk as an engineer and sit in a cube, farm, and there's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of people, I hear that a lot. So some people already kind of, it's probably why you're here, kind of in that category. Yeah. But you had a question?
I was just gonna ask, do you see a lot of sales engineers kind of move up the company because they already have the business brain, or is it just kind of anyone goes into the corporate world?
You do. I think sales in most companies it's not a guarantee, but it is typically a faster track for upward movement. In sales though, that will require moving in most all cases. So, we just had a guy, he's been in Tampa, Florida as a sales engineer. He got promoted to a sales manager. He had to move, him and his wife moved to Louisville, Kentucky. And those are the kind of things that would come with it. But our president, our past two presidents, and our past two or three, maybe even, no, not just our past two presidents, probably, I'm sure there's more. Most of them have come from the sales track. And I bet that's similar in a lot of companies because you have that business understanding. You kind of get it, you see all sides. And it's very important for a business to understand your customers. Sales has to understand our customer base. And so, we got to take that back to the business. There's nothing wrong with the folks that don't have the customer face. They kind of understand it fundamentally, but interacting with it the way sales does is certainly a much more broad-based knowledge about our customers in our business. Anybody else?
That's great. Thank you. We have the room until 4 if you guys want to speak, more directly.